Probably the last thing you expected to hear at church, but I really want to encourage you to be a rebel. Jesus was a rebel, but here's the thing. It's important to rebel against the right things. Today's culture doesn't want you to become the best version of yourself. Today's culture doesn't want you to think too much about life. Today's culture doesn't want you to become hungry for the truth. Today's culture doesn't want you to develop your spiritual self. Today's culture doesn't want you to have a great relationship with God. Modern culture just wants you to go along, be a good little obedient consumer, and not ask too many questions about where the whole experiment of modern culture is leading. I want you to rebel against that. I want you to rebel against the modern culture. Now let's compare God's vision for you and your life with the modern culture's vision for you and your life. God loves you deeply and wants you to become the best version of yourself. The modern culture doesn't care about you and usually leads you toward a second-rate version of yourself. What drives God? Love. What's driving the culture? Consumption. Almost everything that happens in today's culture is aimed at getting you to buy something or feel inadequate or both. Everything has a brand on it today. What do we first use brands on? That's right, cattle. What do we next use brands on? Correct again, slaves. And what do brands signify? Ownership. Do we own the brands or do the brands own us? Are we still the consumers or are we being consumed? We need to start thinking on a deeper level. Are we cattle and slaves or free men and women? You see, God sees us as His children. He created us free and He wants to keep us free. The culture sees us as cattle and wants to turn us into slaves. Do you want to be a child of God or a slave to the culture? The problem is, most of us spend a lot more time listening to the culture than we do listening to God. It's time to rebel. Reject the world's vision for your life because it leads to emptiness and misery in this life and the next life. Embrace and celebrate God's vision for your life because it leads to joy and fullness now and forever. They say that every teenager goes through a rebellious stage. But we usually rebel against the wrong things. If you want to rebel against something, rebel against the culture that wants to rob you of your best self and enslave you. Rebel against the things that seek to make you less than who you really are. The history of our great faith is full of examples of men and women who rejected the culture's vision for their life. Anthony of the Desert inherited an enormous fortune as a young man when his parents died. The vision the culture had for him was to live a life of privilege and luxury as a wealthy landowner. He rejected the culture's vision for his life when he heard the words of Jesus. If you want to be perfect, go, sell what you possess and give to the poor, and you will have treasures in heaven. And come and follow me. Anthony sold or gave away all his land and possessions. He gave the money for the care of the poor, and he became a hermit. Over time, he developed the monastic way of life, and he is considered the father of all monks. This story may seem far from the world you live in, but reconsider it. Was Anthony's decision a difficult one? Yes. Was it a courageous decision? Absolutely. Did many of his friends think he was crazy? For sure. Did he have to overcome his own selfish desires? Yes, he did. Your world is not that different. When you decide to walk with God, you will have to make tough choices, courageous decisions. Many of your friends will think you are crazy, and you too will need to overcome your selfish desires. You and Anthony, you're not that different. Reject the modern culture and the world's empty vision for your life. Embrace God. You'll be happier.